Okay. Let's power through. We're going to try to finish as much of this as possible. We've got about, 10 minutes left of this debate. It's been a great debate. A lot of feminine energy, that's for sure. Let's continue. I think you guys get it. Everyone in the comment sections gets what's going on here, but we got to complete it. We've got to. Let's go.
And so with the public school shootings that we read about.
We're going to get into the safety issue. The safety issue. Public schools aren't safe because of shootings, and I would argue because of pedophiles and grooming and all kinds of things like that. Let's see if they get into the real issues or if they just distract and do the normal thing that they do.
Is that a factor in the decision at all?
Well, that was all on the table already for my kids. And so I think part of this conversation, and this relates to the fear-based decision, is to have an assumption that there's such a thing as a safe place to raise your kids. There are always dangers and there are always benefits. There's always a risk and always a reward. And if we perceive only reward, then we probably haven't thought about it enough. And if we perceive only risk, then we probably haven't thought about it enough. And we understood the risks and the rewards of where we were placing our kids in our community at the time that they were going through, as far as to the best of our ability. And so, you give a 16-year-old a car to drive, and it's risky. So I think things like gun violence, where it's, I can't control that. But then there were all of these other risks that were associated with, the kids who were in some of the Christian schools in the area, where the kids that actually had a terrible traumatic thing happen in public school ended up going into that space. And then, you have a peer group of, your whole class size is 20 people. And so if it's toxic, there's nowhere to go, whereas in the public school, if your peer group is terrible, you can find another one because you're graduating with a class of 1,000 students in our case. And so, there are risks to being in a bigger school. There are also rewards. There are risks to being in a Christian school. There are also rewards. Homeschool situation. I know Jonathan would never say that every homeschool scenario is ideal, in the same way that I would not. It's in some cases it's like, wow, that's really terrible. Someone should intervene. But there's not eyes on the situation in the way that there are in other settings. And so, again, so much of it comes down to not where are you going to educate your kids, but what kind of a parent are you going to be? Are you going to be a parent who is vigilant in the best ways and then open-handed in all of the best ways too? And so risk is always going to be something that you have to weigh, and people reach different conclusions, which is why we have this conversation today. But we all want to be motivated out of love and not fear, love for our children, but also with an eye toward what can go wrong. Sure.
Right. So I mean, she's a smart woman. If only they would, Big Eva would apply some of this risk-reward stuff with the vaccine stuff and all of that, that would have been good. But of course, they don't do that. But yeah, of course, there's always risks and rewards. There's always benefits and costs. You can't just consider one side of the equation and not the other. That makes sense. Are public schools dangerous? Yes, they're dangerous. Are they more dangerous than your home? Yes, they're more dangerous than your home. Is there any benefit to public school that outweighs the danger? I'm hard pressed to see what the great benefit of public school is that outranks the danger. But that's a good answer, I guess. I mean, again, I don't agree with her premises, but the idea that there's risks and rewards that you have to benefit, I'm all about that. That's always true, and everyone should make their own decision. However, when there's all risk and no benefit, except for the fact that you get to have your career and be in full-time ministry, you don't have to worry about killing your children because you are such a angry person and you're incapable of teaching your kids or being around them for 8 hours a day for some freaking weird reason. I mean, anyway, let's let Pennington answer.
Do you have anything to say on that?
No, I just agree. And bad stuff happens in Christian schools as well, and In homeschooling situations, bad things happen too. Yeah.
Well, of
so
course, bad things happen in Christian schools or in homeschooling situations, but that's not the point. The point is it as bad as public school? Is it as risky as public school? Like, of course, bad things happen everywhere. There's bad people all over the place. That's part and parcel of Christianity. You know, what's the heart of man? Only evil continually. Is there anyone righteous? No, not one. Like, everyone has, even Christians have besetting sins and stuff like that. So there's no perfectly safe situation in every case. But that's not what's being asked. What's being asked is in comparison, because the way Jen kind of puts it, it's like, Christian schools, are just as dangerous as public schools. They're just as immoral as public schools. Maybe sometimes, in fact, more immoral. And that's not the case. That's not the case. Again, there's just a lack of belief here that Christianity is even good, that even benefits people. Is Christianity even good? Big Eva seems to think no. That's basically what it boils down to here. Public school, just as dangerous as homeschool, just as dangerous as pagan school. Someone needs to intervene in these homeschools. This is evil all the time. It's like, that's just really not how it is. That's not how it is at all.
I agree with that. If I might pivot a little bit, just one
The
of the
thing
things
is, like, you gotta compare apples to apples, right? All things being equal, right? Because Jen says, well, it kind of depends on how good your parent is. Well, obviously, it depends on how good if you have an evil parent and they're homeschooling, those kids are going to be in an evil and dangerous situation. Obviously, why even say it? Why even say it? It's so obvious. Homeschooling's not a magic pill. So homeschooling doesn't make an evil parent not evil. And likewise, a Christian school doesn't make an evil teacher non-evil. That's not the same. So here's what you got to do, right? Have a good parent, a good God-honoring parent. And you've got a kid in public school, you've got a kid in a good Christian school, and you've got a kid in your home school with a good Christian parent. In each scenario, you've got a good Christian parent. What we're asking for is, relatively speaking, what's more dangerous, what's more risky? And the reason why they won't go approach it that way, they've got to use unequal measures, is because they're lying to you. So if you did it that way, you've got a good parent with a kid in public school, a good parent with a kid in a good Christian school, and a good parent with a kid in homeschool. What's the best situation? That's the real question. But no, they've got to equivocate and use generalizing language and things like that. By the way, I've been researching a lot and trying to learn as much as possible about statement analysis and speech analysis and witness analysis, things like that. Trying to learn about, like, what kinds of indicators indicate lying or deception or protecting yourself, and how language plays into that. Because the idea behind this stuff is that even when you're lying, the language that you choose to use or choose not to use can really reveal the truth. It's very interesting stuff. There's so much equivocating going on here. There's so much stuff happening here that just shows you that they're just really not being honest with you when it comes to this. And a lot of the stuff with speech analysis and statement analysis, you kind of know intuitively. Like, not to trust someone when they use certain words. Like when they say honestly, right? It's like, that's just like overkill. Why even say it? I even say this sometimes, right? It's like, why even say it? You're saying it to try to be super convincing. But it's like, well, but obviously you're being honest. I mean, usually it's assumed you're being honest. So when you say honestly, it's almost like you're being deceptive, and it doesn't really show like someone's specifically lying to you or not, but it does show that there is an awareness of how they're talking and how they sound and what you probably think about it. Like, there's just all kinds of cool stuff when it comes to statement analysis. Anyway, when I get really good at it, I'm going to start to implement that into my content here. But anyway, let's continue.
I was thinking more about when we enjoyed homeschooling, which we did stop doing because it did become untenable with our 300 children, it felt like, and various things. But one of the things that I did love about it as well is that it enabled us to truly focus on each child's development in a distinct way. And I feel the tension because I do believe in the common good and public education, all the things we agree with. But it was also really wonderful to be able to identify gifts and talents in not just a cookie cutter way, and to really help children develop. So our fifth kid, for example, most kids draw a lot, but we could tell there was something different about his ability. My mom was a painter. My wife's a professional artist as well. So he kind of got the double gene of it, I think. And we were able from a young age to start giving him private art lessons. And now he's, going into oil painting, portraiture, and this high-end kind of thing. That could not have happened in a public education system, just in the sense of like, it would be one class of many, or it would be some super extracurricular thing that would just add to the stress of life. And so that's one of the things that we really loved about the ability to focus on the development of each individual child, not in a kind of cookie cutter way. I feel the tension again of that versus the common good. And
what
that,
tension is he even talking about? What is he even talking about? That he's right. That is a beautiful and wonderful thing about homeschooling, because each of my kids, I said this in the last video, each of my kids has certain strengths. Each of my kids has certain weaknesses. And it's helpful to know that kind of stuff, because it allows you to sort of focus on certain things and to encourage in certain things, and to adjust how your lesson plan works for different people, how you teach different things. One of my kids is just amazing at numbers and math. And he can do things in his head that I know that I couldn't do when I was younger, and my other kids can't do, and things like that. And so for him, math lessons are different than for one of my other sons, who doesn't quite come as naturally to him. And we know we adjust things depending on the situation. What does that have to do with common good, though? What does that have to do? Listen, there is nothing wrong with acknowledging that your kids are your responsibility. Jesus says in the law of God, it says that you should train your children in the way they should go. That doesn't mean that you can't be a teacher and train other kids. That doesn't mean that you can't, do charity and bring in other kids into the fold, whatever. That doesn't mean any of that. But your responsibility are your kids. And so obviously most of your time should be spent on your kids. There's nothing wrong with that. So what does that have to do with common good? What does it have to do with everybody else's kids? What does this have to do with public school? Your responsibility is your family, your kids. That doesn't mean that you don't give charity. It doesn't mean that you don't, love your neighbor. It doesn't mean that but the majority, the lion's share of your time, attention, focus, prayer life, everything should be focused on you and yours. It's just that simple. This is how God created the world. This is how God created the world. What does it have to do with, there's no tension there with the common good. My kid really liked art, so I got him some private art lessons because, I just wanted to encourage that. I feel the tension with the common good. What tension? There's so much. One of the things about Big Eva that's so annoying is that so often there's so much implied in what they're saying, but they don't come out right and say it and let you fill in the blanks. And so one person in the comments, and God bless you for making this comment. This is a very astute comment. She said, they never tell you what the bad experience was with the Christians, right? Like Jen says, I had a bad experience with Christian schools. This is a bad experience. But they never give you the detail. Never. They never, ever, ever do it. And that's a rhetorical trick, because what you do in your mind, Jen is not a stupid woman. She's a conniving woman, but she's not stupid. So what she does is, I had a bad experience in Christian schools, and she doesn't tell you the detail. And so what ends up happening rhetorically is, in your mind, you fill in the blanks in your own mind what that bad experience would be. So that could be racism. It could be overly disciplinarian. It could be someone that got spanked at their Christian school. It could be sexual abuse. It could be anything. You fill in the blanks with whatever wicked thing that you want to. In my mind, it became like an overly rule crazy disciplinarian. That's what it became in my mind. But the thing is, I don't know that because she didn't say that. She didn't say that. So this could be anything to anyone, and it becomes real. It becomes like, this is a problem. Christians, this is problems. Because she didn't actually give. See, I bet you, if you actually looked into the details of what her bad experience at Christian school was, probably not all that bad when it comes down to it. It's probably like they taught that women shouldn't be ministers. That's what it often happens. It's like there's this one guy on Twitter that always says, like, literally every time someone deconstructs, it's because they have sexual sin. And it's like, I got abused by the church. I had a bad experience with the church. And he's like, well, what was it? well, they tell me that I can't have sex with another guy. And you look at them and you're like, the heck are you talking about, man? You can't. You can't. If you're going to be a Christian, you can't do that. That's disgusting. And so that's common. They let you fill in the blank. Oh, I feel the tension. Well, what tension, John? What tension are you talking about? Enlighten us. Help us. See, that would actually be helpful. But, Gospel Coalition isn't here to help. They're here to propagandize you. That's a nice image right there.
Was coming to mind as I was reflecting back on those early years of homeschooling and how much we enjoyed it.
There's
And
so much feminine. I was just reflecting on the wonderful early years of homeschooling. Just so much feminine energy here. It's ridiculous.
Spent a lot of time practicing their instruments. Our one thing is that our 16-year-olds, once they got that, our deal was you need to start working a job. And for those that were doing like 2-day week school, which they were at that time, they worked jobs, and that was a way that they were certainly connected to the broader world and exposed. And actually, they worked quite a bit and saved a lot of money for college. The older kids did, because they had the freedom in their schedule to go to school and get their schoolwork done. They did all their schoolwork, but actually work in the workplace. So that was a really nice situation for them that developed, and a lot of bad stuff happened. They worked at McDonald's and McAllister's, and yeah. So in terms of
their
they learned.
Cholesterol went up.
Yeah,
Their socialization went through the roof.
Yeah, it was.
Why would
crazy,
their socialization go through the roof when they went to McDonald's? What is this, like homeschoolers don't have friends? What is this thing with socialization? I don't understand this. Like I look at my kids, and they have friends. They have friends that they play with, and they talk to each other, and they hang out, and what is this thing with social? You got to get a job to be social. What? I just don't get this. This is one of those common things. It's just like they're not socialized. Well, who says? What kind of weirdos are these people? I got to homeschool my kids. They can't socialize with anybody. Like what? Again, this is one of those things that just people. It's just assumed, and it's like, but why? Why is it like that?
Again, those are just some of the ways that I would also argue for the good of, if you have the choice, which many people don't, but if you have the choice, the ways that you can really develop individual children to be who God's called them to be, and then to use those particular gifts and abilities to bless the world.
Is it impossible to socialize unless you're forced to socialize? Like my kids have friends, and they like to hang out with them, and they want to, so they do. So I guess that doesn't count as socialization. Like, I guess you have to, in order for it to count as socialization, you have to be forced into a room with people that I guess you don't know, or something like that, or you don't like even, or maybe I don't understand. Like, why is it like, oh, you got to get a job, and that'll mitigate the socialization? I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm unusual or weird. My kids are homeschooled, and they have friends, and they hang out with them. And it's really not that hard.
The vision we imperfectly, tried to cast for them. So
I didn't know if you want to respond. He brought up focusing on developing certain talents and working. Do you want to respond to that?
You anti-extracurricular person.
Yeah. I feel like we were able to do that as well. I think when you see that a child has a skill or a talent that is an outlier. Now the problem is like organized sports is telling every parent that their child has a skill that's an outlier, or whatever it is. But again, we had a ton of time.
What's the deal with this anti-organized sports thing? I honestly don't get that either. This seems to be tailor-made for agendas to knock out of the park as well. I thought that was a really weird approach. It's like you can't possibly, encourage someone to be an artist if they have artistic skills unless you're homeschooling. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Of course, you could do that. And public schools do that kind of stuff as well. I'm not saying that public school, not everything is like evil about public schools. Public schools are capable of doing certain things. I don't agree with public schooling for Christians, of course, but doesn't mean that they do everything wrong. But what's this? I don't understand. Could somebody in the comments let me know what's the deal with the anti-organized sports thing? Like, I honestly don't know anyone that's in organized sports that thinks that their kid is like. I don't know. I personally don't know anyone that thinks that their kid's going to go to the Major League Baseball or basketball, the NBA or NFL or something like that. They almost make it seem like if you're doing organized sports, then you're definitely angling to get your kid into the major leagues. Like I'm sure there's some people like that. I don't know anyone like that though. It's just like it's a weird kind of It's a weird thing that they're focused on. They're pro public school, but anti organized sports. Organized sports is voluntary. Organized sports is like I don't get it. Maybe someone else in the comment section knows. Maybe there's something really evil and insidious about organized sports. I don't know.
Time together, we have a pianist in the family who's really, really good. We have a child who's fluent in Spanish. So I don't think it's off the table to do that. Again, it's how present are you in the life of your child. And then for us, it was like the job thing is interesting to me because we really did not pressure the kids. I'm not saying you pressured your kids, but we didn't press our kids toward you need to go get a job.
Yeah.
Because they would come home, especially in high school, they would come home from school and they spent every minute from the time they got home until they went to bed doing schoolwork. Now, a lot of times that was us involved in that, but there is a time element. That is something that is a trade in this. That isn't mitigated entirely.
Yeah, because there's a lot of wasted time in school. I mean, in Christian schools too. I mean, in any kind of.
Honestly, maybe this is just my experience. Maybe I'm just, super intelligent. I never really spent that much time doing schoolwork after school. I really didn't. I don't know. I didn't really think that there was that much going on that was so rigorous that I needed to. Oh, sorry about that. That was that sounded bad, but that was this thing. Anyway, that was that rigorous that I had to spend from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. doing schoolwork. I don't know. Just maybe I'm just gifted. Maybe I'm a gifted guy. Some of you are saying, yeah, you're gifted, all right. In any case, let's let him continue. This is kind of boring. I might end it here.
Formal education. It seems like there's a lot of wasted time. There's a lot of time spent in classroom management.
There's tons of wasted time in public school, by the way. Oh my goodness. I could tell you stories about my experience in public school. There is so much wasted time.
Education, et cetera. And, again, I feel the tension of the goods that come from it, but if you're talking from
what
a purely
goods?
educational
There's
standpoint.
tension. What goods?
I don't know, especially at the younger years, there's a lot you can do. Like our kids, one of the things we saw with our older kids is that because they were originally homeschooled and then 2-day-a-week consortium kind of situation, they were so ready for college because they had learned to be independent learners. Like they learned they needed to get their work done, they needed to manage their schedules, and they were able to work jobs as they did it. So it felt like it really helped them enter into adulthood. And like when they got to college, they were used to managing their time and they're used to working jobs and doing all that stuff. So I'm not saying that's the only way it can happen, but for us, that worked well for training them in kind of adult skills and adult work-life balance. And that.
Yeah, I think I view what you're calling wasted time as time to study human nature, because you get out into the workplace and guess what? That's what you're dealing with a lot.
A lot of wasted time.
It's like the never-ending group project.
Yeah,
and so
right.
I would say that what our kids learned was that whole scenario
This is
of
interesting because this has kind of turned into John saying things that are better about homeschooling, and I think some of the things he's saying are definitely true. And Jen kind of is on the defensive here. This is actually an interesting turn where she's like, well, we can do that too. She said this has happened a couple times where it's like, I was able to, turn my kid into an artist. Well, we can do that too. We've got pianists. And then he's like, yeah, well, the wasted time. Well, what is studying human nature? It's like that one was so lame. I think what you're calling wasted time, I'd like to see as studying human nature. In other words, it's wasted time. That's what she's saying. She's on the defensive here a little bit. I think that she's trying to, like Jen in this section is giving the best excuses possible. Public school is inferior to Christian school and to homeschool in every way. In just about every way. It's inferior. It's an inferior choice for a Christian. And so she's kind of just giving her best defenses of it. Oh, it's just studying human nature, which of course you can't really do as the homeschool. There's no way to study human nature as the homeschooler. It's like, that's sketchy. You can't study human nature as a Christian schooler. It's like, I don't know. I like this part. This part's pretty good, And Jonathan, though, he's of course he's being very polite. He's giving her all the outs. He's like, well, of course you can do this in a public school too. And she's like, oh yeah, totally. It's like studying human nature.
Oh, I'm gonna do pretty much the whole group project because you don't care. there were a lot of kids who did not care about their educational environment and didn't have parents who were going to help them to care. And so again, there were a lot of really helpful counterpoints. And my kids transitioned pretty seamlessly from a large high school to a university of 50,000 undergraduates. And they had all the skills they needed from a study skills perspective to get through it. So I do think, again, I think it goes back to what kind of a parent do you intend to be. Children can learn virtue either through a formalized presentation of it in their education sphere, or they can learn it through the way that they're interacting with one another at home, through parents who are thinking toward that.
It's so interesting because it just occurred to me, like, we're almost done here, and we have not heard the case of why public school is the Christian ideal. All we've heard from Jen is, well, you can still be sort of successful in public school. I mean, my kids are engineers and pianists and doctors and artists. It's like, yeah, again, like I've become a successful adult. I went to public school. Nobody's saying you can't. What we're asking is what should Christian parents do? What does the Bible teach? What's the ideal? She says public school is the Christian ideal. She has not even said one word about why that is. This is just her opinion and her experience and her emoting, right? And she's had a lot of stupid things to say along the way, but that's basically what we're at the end of this, and she hasn't really done anything. She's lost this debate. It's just that simple. And so what we're getting is, my kids are great. This has been one big, like, hour-long thing for Jen to say, for John to make some decent points, and for Jen to say, my kids are fantastic. They're engineers and pianists. That's basically what we've gotten here, and it's a real. I mean, it's not that unexpected, but yeah, let's let this finish.
So, yeah.
That's good. Well, speaking of time management, we're running out. Let me finish by asking briefly, what is the most compelling part of your opponent's argument?
I'll answer, and then I'll let them answer. So, from John's perspective, what's the most compelling part of his argument? Well, I think his argument was really good in general. The beginning part of it, where he talked about what education actually is, what it's for, that's an insurmountable thing. If you agree with that part, it's supposed to be creating people that not only know things and are academically good, but it's supposed to be creating people that are Christ-like, that understand what God has created, who God is, what it says about who God is in what He's created. Like, that's the focus of education. If you agree with that, there's no way to say that a pagan public education is what a Christian ought to do. So compelling, very good. I thought John was a little weaselly, a little limp-wristed at times, but that's Big Eva thinks that Gospel Coalition thinks that that's what being winsome is. That's what good faith is. That's not the case. Being limp-wristed and weaselly is not equivalent to good faith. But I have to commend Pennington. That was very strong. He did a great job. He's won this debate. The most compelling part about Jen's presentation, the most compelling argument, I don't know. There really wasn't much. Like I said, I guess the fact that her kids are so successful. One thing you should notice, she focused on their secular achievements. I don't mean that to sound negative, because I just mean she focused on their achievements, like, oh, an engineer, a pianist. She focused on those things, and I assume her kids are believers, but she didn't say that. She focused on essentially academic excellence. That was the most compelling part of her thing. But the thing is, we all already knew that. Sure, kids can be successful going to public school too. I've been successful. I went to public school. My brother's successful. My sister, we went to public school. Everybody already knew that. So that's the most compelling part of her argument. But it's really not compelling at all. Nobody's asking if you can survive public school. What we're asking is, what should a Christian do? What's the Christian ideal? She promised to give us that this was the Christian ideal. She did not do that. She just made some vague stuff about the common good, didn't really define what that was, didn't really define why Christian public schools would be bad for the common good, though she said that it would be. She said Christian schooling is bad for the common good. There's so much insanity in what Jen Wilkin has said. There's so much unbelief. There's so much unchristian stuff about what she said. That yeah, it's just let's just let them finish and then we'll be done.
Yeah, again, I'm very sympathetic, and I think especially the idea of, still being deeply involved in the community, and related to that, what you said about not just making choices that are for my family, which is, I think, so easy to default to that, and I'm sure I've been guilty of that as well. I'm sure I probably even have said that phrase at some point, and so I really appreciate that and value what you're saying about the. Yeah, I've
It's
got
just
to
a
think
non
about more
sequitur.
than my family. I gotta
That's
think about
not that wasn't
how
strong at all.
my
That was a
family
non sequitur.
can
Didn't make any
and
sense
should
to the
contribute
debate.
to larger goods. So really appreciate that. Yeah.
I think the time piece, because I love the time with it. I've joked with Jonathan, it's not a joke, that I just want them to all live on the same block and we can all do, I'm like, I get other cultures do that and I know why. And there is that. I remember when the year between Matt's kindergarten and Mary Kate's kindergarten, the state of Texas changed kindergarten from half day to full day. And I was so sad. I was like, the state took my children from me, and I'm sure I was super dramatic about it. But there is that. I mean, you do, like, I remember
The state didn't do anything to you, Jen. You did it. I feel like this debate has gotten me to feel more anger than any of the other debates. It's so angering to watch a parent shirk her responsibility as a mother and try to defend it, and to try to not only defend it, but to pretend like she's not doing what she's doing. She sacrificed time with her kids. She sacrificed her role as a mother in order to pursue full-time ministry is what she did. That's what she did. Now, she'll dress it up to sound really nice about the common good and all kinds of nonsense. And, the state took my children from me. No, you did that yourself. They didn't take anything from you. You gave them to the state. It's just that simple. The state didn't do jack. You did it.
just missing them, at the beginning of
And
each
you'll
school
never,
year. And
ever get that time back. You can't redo it. It's just that simple. And so maybe keep your mouth shut and stop convincing other mothers to make the same mistake that you made. How about that for winsome? How about that for good faith? Because that's what Jonathan really wants to say, but he doesn't want to give up his career to say it. How about instead of pretending like the state did something that it didn't do, you did it yourself. You had to agree to it. You gave your kids up. So how about just going quietly into the night instead of convincing other mothers to make the same mistake that you made? So
you hit a
evil.
rhythm,
It's so
you
evil.
try
Jen's
to
position
recapture
here has
what
been
time you
so
can. And I do
evil.
think that we did recapture or hold on to really good time spaces for people who had chosen public education. But he's not wrong. Homeschool gives you a lot of time with your kids, and that's
You had
precious
to
time.
recapture it. Yeah, why'd you have to recapture it? Because the state took it from me. No, because you let them do it. You gave your kids up, and so you had to come up and scramble with a way to recapture the time because you gave it up. You thought something else was more important than that time, and so you had to figure out and scramble a way to recapture it. Did you do it successfully? You say you have. I have no idea if you have or not. You say you have. But you didn't have to do that. That was your decision. Hold on one second. Let me just get rid of this here. Sorry about that.
I know some of our favorite people were homeschooled as kids. Like, they're not, all the stereotypes that you might have heard 20 years ago or whatever, they're just not true. Really well grounded and well-formed kids can come out of a homeschool space. And I cannot deny that and have no wish to. But yeah, it's the time. It's that sweet time piece. Mm-hmm.
All right, well,
thank
that's
you
enough
both.
of that. So anyway, glad to be done with this one. I'm not sorry for anything I said. I'm not sorry for getting a little angry about this. And I'll see you in the next one, because the next one's about climate change, and we're definitely going to do that one. I hope you found this video helpful. God bless.